Welcome. Father Julián Carrón was ordained in 1975. He graduated in 1976 in theology at the Comillas Pontifical University and earned a doctorate in scriptural theology in 1984 from the Theological Faculty of Northern Spain. Since 2004, he has taught Introduction to Theology at the Catholic University of Milan, Italy. And since Father Giussani's death on February 22, 2005, he has been president of the Fraternity of Communion and Liberation. In 2008, Pope Benedict appointed him as consultor to the Pontifical Council for the Laity. The same year, the Holy Father invited him to address the General Assembly of the Synod of Bishops on the Word of God in the Life and Mission of the Church. On May 2011, Benedict XVI appointed him consultor of the new Pontifical Council for the promotion of the new evangelization. On May 2012, the Catholic University of America bestowed an honorary degree in sacred theology on him. And in October 2012, he participated in the Synod on the new evangelization for the transmission of the Christian faith as a synodal father appointed by the Pope. On September 2015, he wrote the book La Bellezza disarmata, The Unarmed Beauty, soon to be published in the US by Notre Dame Press. Joseph Weiler. Joseph Weiler is university professor at NYU Law School and senior fellow at the Center for European Studies at Harvard. Until recently, he served as president of the European University Institute, Florence. Previously, he served as Manley Hudson Professor of International Law at the Harvard Law School. He is editor-in-chief of the European Journal of International Law and the International Journal of Constitutional Law. He holds a PhD in European law from the EUI, Florence, and honorary doctorates from various European and American universities, including an honorary doctorate in theology from the Catholic University of America. He is the author of several books and articles in the field of European integration, international economic law, and comparative constitutional law.
Thank you very much. I have to start with a wonderful joke, which you will see at the end relates to your book. So there's this serious, observant Jew, like myself, who raises his children to be serious, observant Jews. And at one point, he decides to send his son to Israel to improve his Hebrew and have the experience of being in Israel. And he sends his son, and when he comes back after 4 months, he's become a Christian. So he goes to a friend of his, and this friend of his says, the same thing happened to me. I also sent my son to Israel, and after 4 months, my son came back. Let's go to the rabbi. So the rabbi says, I have to see what's going on. And he sends his son. And after 4 months, he comes back a Christian. So the rabbi says, this is very, very strange. We have to go and ask God. So they go to God, and God says, this is very strange. I also sent my son. And how does this relate to your book, Julián? I'm not sure I'm going to let my sons read it. So this is going to be a conversation, and of course, pride of place will be for Julián, but he asked me to start by saying, what are my impressions of the book? Because you sent it to me in draft, and then I read it when it came out in Italian, and now the last few days I've read the English translation, finishing it. I literally just came straight from the airport here after a 22-hour flight from Singapore.
We need to thank him for this gesture of friendship, because only somebody like Joseph can do something like that. 22 hours of trip to come here with us.
So, well, also to see my grandson.
It's terrible.
So I'm 65 years old, and I've seen quite a bit in my life, but I think 2016 was a terrible year. I was in Florence, I was living in Europe then, and I don't think I have to tell you, just everything that could go wrong went wrong. The European Union, which is the central subject of my reflection in my professional life, seems to be going through the most difficult crisis. We had a lot of violence, the terrible story of Syria. We had terrorism in the heart of Europe, in France, in Germany, in other places. We had the migration crisis, which the real crisis is the reaction to the migrants, not the migrants themselves. We observing the rise of movements which used to be on the fringe and now have become center. We suddenly, people speak with respectability of illiberal democracy, which almost seems an oxymoron, really a very, very difficult year. So the first impression of your book, in that difficult year, it was a kind of balm for the soul. Not only the wonderful style, soft, caressing style of writing, which should not obscure a very, very sharp message, but the approach is very soothing in some way. And the message, I think, is very important, because throughout this crisis, or these crises, and this is not only something that is relevant to 2016, at least in Europe, apart from very important statements from various popes, the Christian voice seems to have subdued. It might be a conversation among Christians, but it's not a central part of the conversation in the broader society. So to come up with this bold book was already important in and of itself, and to my gratification, it received a lot of resonance in the general press. In other words, people whose faith is non-faith were impressed, thought it important, discussed about it. And then when I come to the content, throughout the book, there you can think of two audiences. One is, it's a message to Christians. How should you be thinking of your faith? And not just in conceptual terms, but in the day-to-day life of faith. How does one confront this kind of reality through which we are living today? What should be one's attitude as a person of faith? And then, at the same time, it's a very sort of old-fashioned word, but for want of a better one, there's a certain missionary dimension to this book, because it's not only how one should live one's life, but what should be one's life in relation to others. How does one communicate, if you want, in this disarming way, the beauty of the life of faith? And that is something that resonates beyond Catholicism, beyond Christianity, I think to a much broader audience. And finally, the way I read the book, in their generosity, in their stupidity, they have been inviting me now for 15 years to come to the meeting in Rimini. So it's been my way of having a certain engagement and even commitment, and certainly a huge measure of sympathy to the movement of communion and liberation, although of course I'm not a member of that by definition. Mm-hmm. And I think your book also to me represents a certain shift in the understanding and perhaps even the self-understanding of communion and liberation, how it operates, how it thinks of itself, what its message should be, and a change which the book both constitutes and reflects, to judge from the last few meetings, which are quite different to the first meetings that I went starting 15 years ago. So there's quite a richness and quite a series of messages in a book which seems coming out exactly at the right time. So maybe the first thing I would ask you is, I remember the experience when Pope Benedict published his 2 volumes on Jesus, Volume 1 and Volume 2. Everybody bought them. But then I could not find anybody who actually read them. Sometimes I had the impression I was the only person. Now, I don't think that's going to be the fate of your book. But maybe...
could not be an exception.
But maybe your first thing, maybe give yourself, like an extended tweet of what you were trying to accomplish with this book.
Good evening, everybody. For years, an Italian editor, Rizzoli, has asked me for a book because he is the publisher of Giussani's book and wanted a book by the leader of the movement today. But for years, I didn't have any particular interest of publishing another book. I didn't feel any need to add a book to my bibliography. No, I didn't care about that. I have a tax now that was leading the movement, and I was enough for me. But after 10 years of Giussani's death, because of the changes that was happened in the society in the last years, at the end I gave up and accepted to send to the publisher this book, that is a collect of different talk or intervention in different situations in which there is a common ground from all of this. Is first of all an attempt of verifying if Christian faith, my faith, was capable of facing all the challenges that we as a Christian have to face in the modern world. No? In this particularly challenging moment in all the issues that Joseph said before, violence, terrorism, migration crisis, economical crisis, anthropological crisis, everything of these issues, education problem, educative emergency, all these kind of issues are challenges that all the society has to face. And I am part of this society as a Christian. I wanted to verify if this faith now, facing these, all these challenges, can resist in front of all these challenges. I can make a contribution to this situation, because as Hannah Arendt describes, a crisis, right here, forces us back to the questions themselves and requires from us either new and old answers. But in any case, direct judgments. A crisis becomes a disaster only when we respond to it with preformed judgments, that is, prejudices. Such an attitude not only sharpens the crisis, but makes us forfeit the experience of reality and the opportunity for reflection it provides. I think this is true. A crisis is something that forces us to think about the things, to think about the challenges, to think about the way we are living, the way we are coping with the difficulties, the problems that we have to face. And became like an opportunity for everybody. An opportunity, not only some kind of disgrace, some kind of obstacle, some kind of fatum, but some opportunity to think about, to rethink the things, updating all our conception, a way of understanding better what is life about, and what is reality, and what is the meaning of life, and what is the foundation of the society. All these kind of things are at stake in that particular moment in history. So I wanted with this book to verify if Christian faith could resist in front of these challenges and make a contribution. First of all, to verify my faith. First of all, it was not a problem for the others, but what I am believed, what I believe really, can be taught in a big audiences like that, in the public domain, or it's only something that is reduced to my private room or in my private domain, in my personal life, or it could be a proposal that can be, culturally speaking, in front of everybody. And this is what I try offering this book to the press. And the summary of the book is a presentation of these challenges and as a first gaze to the reality with all these kind of issues that Joseph mentioned before, and trying to understand what are the roots of this situation in which we find now. And the second big chapter is Christian faith. Has something to offer as an answer to the challenges or not? And this is a way of presenting Christianity as an original approach. What is Christianity about? Not only a set of rules, not only elenchus of Christian dogmas, but as an event that can reawake the people, every person, and start again alive, trying to generate a way of living in the reality as a human being. And this is the opportunity to face another big chapter of the book, the education question. What is one of the most important challenges that the present society has before it, because the generation of a new society depends on the possibility of educating people, children and youth, in a way of living in the reality that cannot end up in violence or in emptiness life that could be the occasion for finishing in violence or in a chaos in the society. And afterwards, I face some of the issues of this debate, like family or politics or different kind of answers to the needs of the society today. I'm finishing with what is the possibility of a new beginning in this situation in which we are living. This is.
Thank you. So let's try and concretize it. And one of the most evocative chapters in your book is called The Challenge of True Dialogue After Charlie Hebdo Attacks. And Charlie Hebdo attacks is followed by Bataclan, by Copenhagen, by Nice, by Berlin. So it was not a unique phenomenon. So what do you mean by the challenge of true dialogue in the face of this kind of events?
This is a good example to understand what is happening in our society, because many times we can look at this phenomenon like some particular issue that is related with some people. But I was thinking a lot about this issue and reading a lot of commentaries trying to understand what is the origin of this terrorist attack, no? Because many times it's reduced like a religious problem or as a psychological problem of somebody. But these are, I think, superficial explanation of something that has deepest root in the society, because some kind of this explanation can be useful to explain some of the issues, but not others. For instance, if only is an Islam problem, we can say that it could be part of the issue, but at the same time there are French or Spanish or German citizens that decided to unite themselves to the ISIS. And this is not a problem of Islam question. What is the origin of this? Why these people from originally different background can decide to join themselves to this group of violence? And I think that the original question is not only a religious one. The people who were born in France, for instance, we were talking about Charlie Hebdo, arrived years ago, bringing with them their own faith in Islam religion, but they have the same problem that many Christian families. They didn't get the possibility of transmitting his belief to the next generation. The secularization is not a problem only for Christians, it's as well for another kind of religions. And many of them finish without any root, any point of reference. And the second generation of these immigrants live in a emptiness, and that was the origin in which can root the violence. No? And they decided with another Western citizen, because all of them were born in France, all of them were students in the schools of France, educated in the values of the Republican society. But it was not enough to generate or to be in front of something that was so attractive to change their attitude. And this is my question in that moment, no? But what they find when some people arrive to our society, what kind of life? Do they find something that is interesting enough to overcome the tendency of violence? This is not a religious problem. This could be a part of the religious problem, but it's a problem of society. And this is a problem that is related to everybody of us. Something that is not for one part of another. It's a problem that all society, all kind of institutions, all kind of cultural environments, all of us are in front of this challenge. And for this, I ask in that moment, what could be a possibility to overcome this? And this is the question that we have now in Europe, where you have now here in different ways. It's not only a problem of economic crisis or only a superficial question. It's the root of a new beginning that we need to think about in order to answer to this question. Allora, then I think that only if Europe or United States or whatever part in the world became a space for freedom in which everyone can be attractive for something beautiful, beautiful enough to overcome the tendency to violence, can overcome this violence anywhere. For that, I ask myself and all the Christians in that moment this question: do we Christians still believe in the capacity of the faith we have received to attract those who encounter, those who arrive to our countries? Do we believe in the living fascination of His defenseless beauty of our faith? This is and this is the challenges we have as a Christian before us, but not only we as a Christian, all the society. If we don't have an answer to this, I don't know how can we will stop this phenomenon.
Let me push back a little bit. And I want to push back. I remember having the same feeling when for the first time I read the first iteration of that chapter on Charlie Hebdo. Because I don't think it's your intention, but I think it could be read in that way or understood in that way, that your interest is in the locally grown, the French, the German, the Belgian, etc., who faced with what you say the emptiness of existence, and then suddenly this kind of message seems attractive to them, and at the end of your story you say there has to be some kind of alternative, the beauty. But what's your take on responsibility? Because one gets the impression it's not their fault, it's society's fault. And you're absolving people for responsibility for their actions because they grew up in a society which, whatever its ills, its emptiness, etc. And it goes back to the sort of therapeutic society. Somebody does something very bad and you immediately ask, what's the reason? He grew up in a society which didn't give value. I have a problem with the notion of responsibility that underlines your analysis.
It's not only that all the responsibility we can apply to the society, no, but it is important, according to my impression, that if somebody, everybody needs something that make meaningful life, and it is part of the education process. No? To be a father, to be a mother, is not only to conceive a baby. No? This is part of the question. But this is not fully a fatherhood. A fatherhood is as well together with the gift of life, is to give a child a meaning for this life. I always, in the past, made an example. If somebody makes a gift to his son, no, a device, a technological device, no, for instance, and you don't offer some hypothesis, a working hypothesis to explain him what is the way in which the device can work, what is the attitude of the child. He can try to react in front of this device without understanding how the device works. So the question is that without that meaning, even the most important gift of life could be used in a way that is not enough to be only as a reaction. It's not because they are not responsible. It's a reaction according to what he can see in this moment. This is the importance of the society, that for this reason, when somebody makes a device, offer in the box some instruction to help the child to understand how it works. But we have arrived to the life with a gift, life, but we don't have any instruction in the box. What is the instruction for living? How can we deal with the meaning of life? And this is the way in which we have received the meaning of life. That we didn't have some kind of instruction when we were born, but we were born in a family, in a country. This family and this country have a richness, no, of all history, in which they have learned a lot about the meaning of life, about how to deal with the problem, with the illness, with the difficulties, with the discovery. And when we offer something to this child, through the family, through the society, through the school, no, we are offering some kind of working hypothesis to understand how life works. And this is a possibility. Without this, we return to the past, like without any possibility of increasing our awareness. Not because the people don't have any responsibility, but they can be educated to grow in their own awareness, to learn a way of dealing with the reality in a meaningful way.
To use your set of metaphors, so if we think of the Christian way of life as a kind of user's manual for life, the kind of set of instructions that you have, what is your advice? What is your thought? What is your conception of how people who follow that user's manual, who have that set of instructions, who believe in it, what is the way they reach outside the Christian community? Because in Europe, with the exception of a few countries, maybe Poland, maybe one or two others, it's a very, very secular society. In the United Kingdom, every weekend, there are more people who go to mosque than there are people who go to church. Even though if you look at the absolute numbers, that's a really dramatic statistic. So how does one reach beyond the internal Christian community to offer this user's manual? What's the method? And that's one of the innovations of your book.
This is a crucial point, because this situation that we are living now in a multicultural society, no, in which we are living, because in many of these countries that you are quoted now, were more homogeneous in the past. Now all of them are multicultural, no? But not always Christianity has find itself in this situation. At the beginning, Christianity was born in a multicultural society. In the Palestine of the first century, it was a multicultural society. There are a lot of different groups of Jews with different approach. When the Christianity went out of the Palestine territory, and it was open to the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire was a multicultural society. Christianity, it was a small group of people in which, without any relevance at that moment. So it was one among other gods in the pantheon of the pantheon of religion at that moment. So Christianity has not been in every occasion in the same situation as we have in the recent past. The society was very different at the beginning of Christianity, and Christianity was widespread all around the Roman Empire with different ways, many times through people that are no relevant people, slaves or soldiers or merchants or traders, because of the daily life trips or the daily life circumstances. People could meet Christianity in the daily life by the newness that these people live in the way in which they were dealing with the normal challenges of everybody. So it's not our society the only way. A homogeneous society is not the only way of conveying Christianity. And in this, what is relevant is that this period, these 300 years from the beginning of Christianity, was one of the most missionary centuries in the history of Christianity. It was not a problem, this kind of situation, because it's not the power of the Christian present, is the diversity what makes missionary the church.
So the book has definitely got a very strong missionary streak to it. But where I'm pressing you is to elaborate, to explicate, to bring to life. So what is the form that this missionary mission should take? I mean, is it like the Mormons knocking on people's doors?
No.
I thought that would be your reply. So tell us, if somebody leaves this room and said, yes, I understand that we cannot just be inward looking, we have to be outward looking. We have something not simply to say to society in terms of values, but say to people in terms of the way of life they should be leading. How does one make that leap? What does one do?
I can tell you some examples of it. For instance, a friend of mine who is married and live with another family, was surrounded by people who didn't want to get married at all, no? Because of different reasons, not because we were against the family values or because were angry against the church, or no, it was because many of them have a difficult experience of family, for instance, because they belong to a family in which all the relationships were broken in the family in which they grew up, and they don't want to do anything with the family, no? And they want 20 different families without any desire to become a family in a, we can say, Christian conception. And nobody pushes them to change their mind. Only they became friends. And sharing the life, in a moment, seeing the beauty of the family, all this family around can see in this family of my friends, little by little, all of them, each one after another, decided to become a family. There is no preach, there is no knock to the door. It's only that the beauty is contagious, because you can find something and you decide to adhere to this, because the beauty of a family life live in such a new way, they didn't want to lose. Not because they were pushed to become coherent with a Christian conception, because they didn't want to lose the beauty of a family life that they didn't know before they met these friends. And from this, we can see people who met another one in the work that is dealing with the challenges of the world in a way that he can imagine to do, and the other with the illness, and the other with the difficulties in the relationship with the friends, and the other with the difficulty in his financial issues. It's only the beauty that is so contagious that when somebody meets this beauty, people cannot resist to follow, to adhere to this beauty, because, not for religious issues, but because of the beauty that they don't want to miss.
Testimony, example.
Testimony. And this is crucial in this particular moment, because we are in a society in which the most important value is freedom. And this is, testimony is the only thing that can be respectful with the freedom. No? Not only something that we can impose to another, but something that we can put before them, challenging them with this beauty. For this is the title of the book, Disarming Beauty, that something that can be so powerful, no, that they make collapse all the objections because of the attractiveness of this beauty.
They should not come to my family on Saturday lunch. No, I'm just, I'm just teasing. I'm just teasing. There's something implicit in this method of testimony, of example, of just people seeing that there's something deep and attractive. You also, throughout the book, you are a little bit reticent about political engagement. Mm-hmm. Am I right in saying that?
Yes, political engagement is part of the interest for the common good. No? This political engagement can have different way of commitment, no? Because we can answer with a particular work, a particular initiative to answer a need, no? Or to engage yourself in our political service for the good, for the common good. So, political is, according to the Pope, Jean Paul II is the most charitable gesture that we can do for the community, and so the question is that we can understand political service just like a service, no? And we can offer a contribution to the common good, because only if somebody is really rooted in a experience of faith that can make him free from all temptation of power, you can offer really a contribution to the common good. Otherwise, you use the power for your own satisfaction, not for the common good.
That was an excellent answer, because my question was wrong. I should not have said a reticence towards politics, but a reticence towards going to bed with power, talking about family.
Yeah,
so politics, yes, but a certain distance from power.
No, with a conception of power, not distance of power. It's a new conception of power. Power is as a service to the community. Of power is to serve yourself, to your own sake, not for the sake of the others, not for the sake of the community, of the society.
So there are two already, even in your words until now, and certainly in the book, there are two kind of leitmotifs. One is education and the other is family.
Yes.
Let's just talk a little bit about the family. So how do you see the crisis of the family? Here I can put in my 2 bits. For me, it's the central issue is not same-sex marriage or even the horrific drama of abortion, but it's the fact that increasingly people don't make children. They have very small families. Somebody said to me,
question.
How can you have more than 3 children? Automobiles only have 5 seats in them. So this is a reply actually I got at one of the meetings. So how do you understand the crisis of family today in what we used to call the West?
Can you tell you some anecdotes about this? No? Because when I presented this book in Torino, in an Italian city in the north of Italy, the director of one newspaper, Mario Calabresi, told us some story about his family. No? His grandfather, who has 7 children, 21 grandchildren, was listening in a family feast 10 years ago, and was listening the conversation between 2 of their cousins in their 50s. One of them says, now I am waiting for them to change my contract at work so that my wife and I can move, and maybe after a while we can think about having a child. When all was settled, maybe we can decide to have a child. My grandfather, usually mild-mannered, gets very angry and invites them, if they want to continue to talk along those lines, to resume their conversation out on the staircase. But why, Grandpa? What did you say? What did we say? He studied them and said flatly, if I followed that same logic, your parents who were born during the war, in the First World War, in some of the hardest times, would never have been born, and neither would the two of you be born. And this celebration today would not be so beautiful. Years ago, people can become father or mother even during the war. Now we need to settle everything in the house, no, to decide to become a father or a mother. What happened in this short period of time? This is what we are trying to understand. What is happening in the last decade that we can see this collapse of things that not so much time ago it was so clear for them. But now the question is that these people not even became aware of what they are saying. I mean, what was the origin of the anger of the grandfather? They didn't understand. And this is the question that we need to understand, because the family is only one example of what is happening. And for me, has been illuminating text of Pope Benedict XVI, in which he analyzes the origin of our society. In the situation of confessional antagonism and in the crisis that threatened the image of God, Illuminism, the Enlightenment, no, you can imagine all Europe and all Western Europe was united by Christian religion. In a moment, this religion was broken by Reformation, and after the Reformation arrived the so-called religious war. And we need, after this particular crisis, a new foundation. And what is the basis for the new foundation? Enlightened thinkers thought that the foundation should be the Christian value that they have received from the tradition. But because of the fight between different denominations in the Christian church, there was no possibility to do that. And so they tried, said Benedict XVI, tried to save the essential moral values outside the controversies, and to identify an evidential quality in these values that would make them independent of the many divisions and uncertainties of philosophy. At that time, continues the Pope, this was thought to be possible, since the great fundamental convictions created by Christianity were largely resistant to attack and seemed undeniable. What happened in the last century? What we have seen now, what we are seeing now is the collapse of this, that they separated from the root, no, the research for this kind of reassuring certainty, something that could go unchallenged despite all disagreements, has not succeeded, said the Pope. This was a failure. And it is what we are seeing in all the domains, the family or the freedom of the, even now some people start to speak like Bauman about the failure of democracy, or some values that until now were self-evident for everybody, the family or the life or the freedom. And now we are starting to recognize that it's not so evident for everybody. And this is the chaos that we are in that particular moment. And so, what is the origin? I think that one of the more insightful analysis of this is one Catholic theologian that in the 40s, the last century, said that the attempts of modern society, illumination, enlightened society, often present a number of values that were Christian in origin, but cut off these values from their source, from their origin, they were powerless to maintain them in the full strength and even in their authentic integrity. Spirit, reason, liberty, truth, brotherhood, justice, these great things without which there is no true humanity, which ancient paganism have perceived and Christianity have instituted, quickly became unreal. And this is the family with life and all that.
But in this respect, therefore, when I look to the future and I read you carefully and I reflect, I'm quite pessimist. Because if we focus on the family, so, and if one accepts my own premise before that the true crisis of the family is that people are not making big families. It's very nucleus, etc. So I see 4 factors which explain the difference between communities of faith and non-communities of faith. The first, people love their children and they want the best for their children. And they're worried about the future of their children. But in the community of faith, you remember when John Paul II, in his very first speech when he became Pope, he said, it's important not to be afraid. So the community of faith in some way are not afraid. They have a certain confidence in the future. And secondly, it's a counterculture to the spirit of the Enlightenment or Neo-Kantianism of today. It's not a culture which is based only on rights and more rights and what are my rights, and rights are so important, and they are, but also on duty and responsibility.
Absolutely.
So that is the second explanation of why you don't find the same phenomenon in certain communities of faith. And the third thing is, let's be open about it, it's a less materialist view of life. So you're not worried if not every one of your children will have an iPad. It's okay if they share it. The materialist premise is much less powerful. And the last is that in the act of making children, one is participating with God in creating life. But that is a religious sensibility. It's a sort of shared endeavor in the creation of life. And somehow, I don't see, even by example and by testimony, that those 4 factors will spill over to communities who are not communities of faith.
But this is the challenge, no? How can we overcome this fear, no? Why are we afraid of this? How can we overcome materialism? How can we overcome only the need to be everything settled to have a child? What is the way of overcome these kind of challenges? Because otherwise, we take it for granted what is the origin of the problem. because if people prefer a new television instead of having a child, is useless. No, it cannot be only a preach. No, that can change their mind. They need to have something, to meet something, to encounter something that can be more interesting for life than to buy another new television. No? And this is what is at stake, no? In our society, that not only we can push saying responsibility, because the question is that people are not listening this kind of appeal to ethics, no? And it's useful to keep appealing to ethics, but the question is sufficient, it is enough to move the deepest part of the heart of somebody to change their own mind? This is my question, because this is what is at stake, because many people in the church have received this kind of encouragement, no? And all of them have received that they need to have a children, or they have not to be afraid of the circumstances of the society, of the challenges. But this appeal only not to be afraid or not to be materialistic is not enough to overcome the temptation of materialism that we can see in the society. And this is our question. How can we offer something that can be more interesting for us, that accumulate other things, and to offer the possibility to a new life can come to the world?
So my experience, I've always seen it halfway. My wife tells me 1,000,000 times it has happened to her. People come to her and say, "Oh, it's so wonderful, I'm so jealous of you. You had 5 children. I mean, isn't it?" And she looks at them and says, "So why don't you have it?" And oh, well. So, let's move to education, because the clock is pushing us. When you say the educational challenge, and also Giussani himself, what do you mean? Changing the curriculum at school? No.
No, but I think it is another important issue, no? Because everybody keeps speaking about the challenge of education, the educative emergency. The use of this word, emergency, now, of education is significant, because we can recognize that it's not one of the problem, but it's the problem, no, in education system. And the question for me is, how can we reawake the young or the children in order that they can be interested? When I was a teacher years ago, I find crucial that I started to be a professor of Christian religion. And even though the school was Christian and Catholic, not everybody there in my room or in my class was interested in. And there are not people who expect or are waiting the teacher to accept all the things that he decides to offer them. We, as a teacher, need to awake the interest for the issue. And this is crucial. It's not a problem of curriculum, it's a problem of how can we convey this interest for what we are trying to communicate them. And this is at all levels, not only in the Christian religion class, but in the mathematics or in the responsibility that they have to assume. Is a way of reawakening again the human being in order that they can understand that it's better to live in a way or in another. And this is the real challenge. But at the same time, the problem of the youth people is the problem of adult people. Because the question is, if we as an adult have some working hypothesis that could be interesting for others, for young people, not only because we can say that we have the truth that they need to accept for the reason they accept it. We need to convey this in a way so attractive that they can be being exalted, his reason, his freedom, to recognize that that way of living is more interesting for them than the other one. And this is the real challenge for education at the level of the family, or at the level of the school, or at the level of the universities, or at the level of the church, or the political parties, or the cultural institution. It's an overall question for everybody.
I see that, they put this huge thing in front of us to remind us of the time passing.
And that's
So
at the end.
I come to maybe what might be a last question. I will shut my ears, and I will invite you not to speak about disarming beauty, but to speak about arming beauty. Because both you and Giussani have a particular message to Christians of how to understand their faith, how to live it. And maybe the very last conclusion to your book is called, How Does a Presence Come to Be? So while I'm not listening, you tell them, what is that conception of how does a presence come to be?
The presence comes to be only for an encounter with somebody in which the life can be changed. No? Only if Christians can testify, can become really a witness of a new life, this new life can be visible. We, all Christians, have been celebrating the Christmas time, no? And the liturgy play with two different words, invisible and visible. The invisible God has become visible, tangible. Christianity only can be find in somebody, in the society, in a colleague, in a family life, if it's tangible. And it's tangible where? Not in the cathedral, in the rocks of a cathedral, or in the past, or in the Bible. No, not even in some books of the past, but in a presence, in a person who is changed by the encounter with Christ. Only this can be the origins, the new beginning of a new understanding of Christianity, because the only thing that we have at hand is the present time. Only in the present can be the possibility of recovering the past, the importance of the past. Giussani always said that only an encounter in the present can be the way of discovering what Christianity is about. Why? Because the first way in which Jesus started Christianity was encountering John and Andrew, the first two that met him. And Christianity will be always according to this pattern, an encounter with an exceptional present in which we can see that what we are looking for is present before us.
Thank you very much, Don Julián Carrón.